from the Gulf Coast, tan and looking good.
Yeah, John, it's been a terrific winter. Really enjoy it down there. It's really my second home.
Sure.
Been there for years and years. It allows me to recharge the batteries a little bit. As you know, we've talked several times in the winter. I do a ton of work on the draft, just kind of unbothered there.
Right.
So I'm always locked and loaded when I come back, and you're out here in my primary home. I just live about 2 blocks down here.
Normally you would ride your motorcycle.
Yeah, if it seemed like 20 after being in Florida, it seemed like it's about 5 below today. But I did get out on Tuesday when I got back, and I was surprised, but obviously that was false gold.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be nice again on Sunday.
On Sunday, yeah.
And then we're going to have, I think, a dedicated portion of nice. What do you think about the game later on tonight? Just
well, it's, obviously it's now or never. And the Pacers, I haven't watched them during the year as much down there. I end up watching the Magic a ton because that's basically the home team and the television team. But what I've seen here in the last couple of nights is just when crunch time is there, they've got to be able to be poised. They've got to be able to establish the go-to situation, how they're going to win it. They play with great heart. You never have to worry about that. So they'll battle to the hilt tonight. Yeah. But I think, as you get to this stage, and the playoffs are different than the regular season, you do see where they miss the guy. They miss that creator when things are tough and somebody has to take over. I've seen situations, where we settle for some bad threes lately. It's a struggle, and Irving is out of his mind.
Out of his mind, and that's something you can't do. And and there's a lot to be said about how, all right, they hit the bar, hit the ceiling, and it's over. 48 wins. I mean, it's a pretty good season considering what they had to deal with. But I don't expect them to go out in the fashion. Like, I'll say this. We've become accustomed, Rick, around here to watching them go through these offensive droughts that drive you nuts. It's just been that way since Vic went down. You just kind of expect it. But the lack of execution that we saw, and really, I question Nate doing the ISO play with Bojan. It's just stuff like that I think people want to take issue with, because they can be better. Like you said, you just play the little poise, a little execution, and circumstances could be different, but they really did kind of whiz down their leg.
Yeah, they did. They did. And I thought that segment in game 1, when they had that 7-point lead at the half and they just got demolished at the beginning of the second half, was, it was like, and they settled for bad shots, bad jumpers, long jumpers, and just got swarmed. So, again, it's now or never now. As you said, I was listening on my way in. You don't want to go into Sunday with that being it.
0-3, down 0-3 on there won't be anybody. That'd be the worst house in the world. All right, we got a draft coming up next week around here, don't we?
It's really exciting.
It's right here.
This is one of the great things for me, even as a coach. I always was involved from day one in my career back to 1982. I was involved in the draft, always a player in it, and I learned to love it. It was like wearing 2 hats. It was always fun to, get away from the actual coaching and get into the personnel part of it. So I've enjoyed it. I mentioned it to you the other day. I actually was present. My rookie coaching season was the first year of the NFL Combine as we know it, in 1982. Before that, they had regional things, and I was actually at the first one, which was held in the Pontiac Superdome, Silverdome, back in the 1982, and then it moved around and finally settled into the most perfect place you could have it, is right here in our home in Indy. And so, from day one, I was raised on the metrics of the Combine. I was never an old school guy who didn't believe in analytics. I always looked for that way to get better statistically. And one of the things I've liked about the Combine, and I hope they never get away from it, is they've never really changed the drills to any substantive matter. So you can look back to 1982 and you can look at a profile on Darryl Green Hall of Famer and compare him with Greedy Williams today coming out of Louisiana State. And for somebody like me that's been in it continuously for this 40 years, that really makes a difference, because I can look at a player profile, and not that, that's just part of the portfolio, but I can say these metrics, these are really good. These are within the range. These are scary, And again, those are all part of it. But I really enjoy that part of it. And, of course, watching the tape, which I spend a lot of time, watching the college tape. And then the only thing that I'm not able to do like I used to do as a coach, but I have a posse in the league of guys that I've brought up that I can get that information. I can't do the one-on-one interviews. So, there are some things there where my portfolio is basically game film, metrics, and then what I can figure out. Like, for instance, Brian Baker is a really good friend of mine. We work together. He's the defensive line coach now at Alabama, but he was the defensive line coach at Mississippi State. So anything, I gave him a call last week, got all the details on Simmons, on Sweat, things like that. So I am able to dig around there.
Is it sketchy to go after a guy that's been injured like that?
Well, here's what I think about
Even
Simmons.
looking at a guy like Jalen Smith.
That's a good question. Here's how I see a big picture, and I'll work Simmons into it. Mm-hmm. I think there are 8 what I consider blue chip high first round draft picks in the defensive front 5. That is edge, interior. And then there are 3 guys that are just below that. So there are 11 guys that in that front 5 are legitimate in my mind, not listening to anybody else or the pundits, are first round guys. And I'll go through all 11 with you either tonight or Monday. And I think that Simmons is a top 5. I think Simmons, if he doesn't hurt his ACL, because those personal problems are way in the rearview mirror. I mean, people have filtered through that. If he doesn't get the ACL, I think he goes in the top 5. So if you're there at 26 and he slips, if you think long term, which I think Ballard does, Ballard is not, you can just see how he operates. Yeah. And I give him credit on this. He's not a short-term, quick-fix guy. I would not be surprised that he wouldn't be strongly in that conversation, and I wouldn't be mad at it, to be honest with you. Because you have a chance at 26 to get somebody that is a lottery pick. You might have to redshirt him for a year. But, we're a good enough team now, I believe. We'll certainly find out this fall. But I believe we're that good a team that we can do that.
So Rick Venturi with us. We're brought to you by Yuengling, Morse Reservoir at Wolfies. If you guys want to call in at 239-1070, you certainly can. I made this comparison a little bit earlier because somebody had sent me a tweet and suggested that the Pacers are too conservative. And my retort was, so are the Colts. I mean, the Colts are, I don't say too conservative, but the Colts are fiscally responsible. So 2 things here. Fiscally responsible, how are they compared to the rest of what you see right now in the present-day NFL in the front office? And can you make comparisons to how they handle things financially to how the Pacers handle things financially, even though free agency and the NBA and the NFL are just stratospherically apart?
Yeah, it would be hard for me to compare them with an NBA team. That I probably couldn't do that. There's a lot different ways to skin the cat. I mean, you've seen the Eagles go big free agency and win a Super Bowl. You've seen the Rams totally rebuild with high visibility, big money players. The Patriots, over the long haul, have been very fiscally, if you want to say conservative, but they've been very strong. Now they've put out money for a guy like Gilmore, who's a lottery corner. I think they paid Gilmore $10 million. But that's a reach for Bill. I think, Chris, and I respect it. I really do. Now, whether or not the model works, one thing about football, we'll know in September and October, November.
And it's a plan. Yeah. And he is not at all deviating from the plan.
No, he has not. And the thing, I think there's about 3 things about Ballard that I think local fans should be happy about and should be optimistic about. Number 1, he lives in the now economically. He understands totally the makeup of today's pro sports. Now, he and I share a common goal. We're both baseball guys. We talk baseball. He's a fan of Moneyball. As a matter of fact, this winter he suggested to me that I read the book, The Extra 2%, which is a Wall Street version of how the Devil Rays went from the bottom, because he knows I'm a Rays guy down there, to the top. So he understands the fiscal. One of the things people don't understand about Bill Belichick, they always think of him as a coach, but as a general manager, he was an econ major in college. He understands the landmark of the game. So I think to be conservative here is not bad. The second thing I believe is he has, and you said it, he doesn't deviate. He has a clear vision for this franchise. It's a singular vision. Do I agree with every nuance in it? No. And we'll talk about what I don't agree with or what I don't like. But in the end, what I respect is the vision. We lack that. We went different directions. The one thing he is going to do, he is going to secure a certain type of player. He's going to put a certain economic value on a player. He's not worried about the short term. He's going to grow. Now, you can't argue with what he's done. I mean, really, he's revamped this franchise. This roster was a mess when he came in here. And when you look particularly at 218, that was a home run, to say the least. Yeah, that's a grand slam, both in free agency.
Yeah.
Because he did second-tier free agents, but who's to argue that Autry and Ebron weren't the two best free agent pickups in the league? Okay, and those were second-tier guys. So, and now it's Houston and Funchess. We can get into that discussion.
Yeah, we will, yeah.
So, I mean, it isn't like we don't deal in free agency. We're just frugal with it. The draft is where you want to go as much as possible, because that's where you get your top players for the money. And you have a good salary base to get them. So, and I think the most important thing is Jimmy has put him in charge. There's no tied at the hip mentality. Ballard is in charge of the Colts. Frank knows that Ballard is in charge. Frank's going to do the X's and O's, but Ballard is running that football team. So, they know how to recruit, to get to draft, because they know what their system is going to be. I may not like certain things of the pass coverage, but this is the system. And I respect that. That's what Belichick was good at, is to have a clear vision. As simple as that sounds, it's very difficult today because there's too many people involved and teams sway back and forth. As I said, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. But I think the way Chris is doing it is going to ensure you long-range success. When you go overboard on free agency, you tend to have the ups and downs, up and down, up and down. Now, would I probably be a little bit more aggressive? Would I probably have gone after Terrell Williams as a receiver and give him a 4-year contract at 14?
As opposed to a 1 year for Funchess?
Yeah. I would have, yes. Yeah. I thought there was that much disparity. But it's not something I'm going to jump here into Moore's Reservoir over, because at least he went out and got somebody who at least situationally can help them a little bit.
So Rick Venturi, he's sitting here with us right now. You brought up something that Jim just kind of stays out of the way. The one thing we both know, and you certainly know it better than I do because you've been closer to him, that he doesn't mind spending money.
Oh.
He doesn't mind spending money. Do you think that there's ever a part of Jim where he sits back and wishes that Chris would be a little bit more free agency-wise, how should I put it, aggressive? That doesn't sound right, but that's really the only thing I can come up with.
Well, I think there probably is a point.
I wonder, too.
There probably is a point. Jim is the thing about Jim, and I tell people this all the time, and one of the three reasons that people should be optimistic about the future of this team, we've already talked about Ballard and the management. Yeah. We're in good hands with Frank Reich as a coach. We lucked out and I think hit a home run there. But it starts with the owner. Now, Jim has idiosyncrasies. He says things sometimes you wonder about. There's been some personal demons. But at the end of the day, he is one of the best owners in this league, and if you need something to make this team better, you can get it. He was quoted this winter as saying, here's $1 billion, go get me a team. And my experience with Jim is Jim does like star quality. There's a little bit of Hollywood, Los Angeles in him. And so I don't think, I'll say this, I'm sure that at times Chris has to hold the line. Because if there was ever a criticism of Jim over the years, it's not that he did go all out. It's that he overbought.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, I think there's a really good mesh there. But when you put owner who just wants a win and don't spend anything, you got a general manager with a clear vision and a good coaching staff, you got a chance to be good for a while. You really do.
Hey, I made the comparison a little bit earlier because the Pacers play tonight and Vic's coming back. Game 3, obviously, a must-win situation. But I kind of equated to the situation the Pacers are in right now because even though they believe in Vic is doing and, he works hard, but there's still a relative unknown about how he's going to come back that I think is similar to the unknown that we sat here with and wrestled around with as far as Andrew Luck is concerned here. I mean, it was Andrew Luck's shoulder throwing. Is he ever going to play again? And it's Vic. He comes back, and nobody's going to say that he's not going to work hard. You know that he is, but you can't subtract any of that athleticism that makes him or has made him what he is right now.
Oh, there's no question about
it. That's the worry.
That is the worry, and you probably have to cover yourself. But, it's funny that you say that, but a year ago right now, well, actually a year ago later in June at that mini camp, I was there when he picks up that ball, and he floats at 10 yards, and everybody went bananas. I mean, it was like the second coming. I thought, Moses had come down with the 10 commandments.
We were all right. Jeff Rickards here with us too, and we were all right there.
I'm like, oh my God, that's as far as he is.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I was actually had my worry warts out, and then he comes back and ends up with a hell of a season. And the bottom line is this. The best way I could say, when I look at this team right now, I look at this team as a very solid football team with a quarterback who can take you to the promised land, okay? You got a real solid team with a top-tier quarterback, and, that spells success, really, because we can talk about all the stuff we talked about, all the formulas, all the personnel stuff, all the coaching stuff. But in reality, the only 2 really bad seasons since 1998 have been the 2 seasons we lost the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
One Manning and one Luck. That's it. Yep. And we were fortunate enough to make the transition to Luck. But in reality,
the 2 8-8s are dinged around too. I mean, there's a lot of missed time by the.
But I mean, the only disasters, the 4 and 12 and the 2 and 14, come when those 2 guys are out. And there are some franchises that have gone decades without somebody that can put them in position to win.
Russell Wilson just got paid a bunch of money.
Yeah, he did.
And I suggested I suggested this, that you have to. People say, oh, man, now the cap is going to be screwed and never going to be good again. But he is still more than the Legion of Boom, more than the head coach. He saved Pete Carroll's career because Pete Carroll's going to get punted. Pete Carroll thought Matt Flynn was going to be the answer there. Remember that? And they lucked out in drafting him where they did. Not only do they owe it to him, but when you have a quarterback like that, you cannot let that quarterback get away.
Oh, no. He is a special entity. The Legion of Boom was huge in the beginning, and they were huge in the Super Bowls. Since then, that team has become average at best. Now, I think they're on their way back. But in the meantime, Wilson single-handedly has kept them in the game. This is a guy that can beat you in the pocket, but then if you have him stopped, he can create. If anybody is worth that kind of money, he's that guy. And so that means when Andrew comes up, the next guy comes up, it's $35 million a year, not $34. So, maybe the NFL will adopt that. What's that NBA where they have that salary cap on the top guy? What do they call it? Your max contract.
Max contract.
That'll be next for the NFL is a max contract.
So Rick Venturi is with us. If you guys have any questions about it, we're going to dive into a couple of different things too. And of course, we're not going to stray away from the Pacers in Game 3 later on tonight. I'll have you coming up at the 5 o'clock hour with Jeremiah Johnson, and Mike Wells is going to join us as well. But Rick is up here, and we wanted to talk. We're not going to dive deeply into the weeds of the draft because we're going to save that for Monday.
We're going to kill it on Monday.
The week leading, but I do want to ask you this.
Sure.
Do you have a hard target? I mean, last year we knew. Last year we knew where they were going to go, so there was really no drama, and there was a way to figure it out. 26, you don't know. A lot of things have to happen. Maybe somebody's there, maybe somebody's not. But do you have anybody that might be a hard target that could be available, sketched out?
Let's kind of look at the first round in general and kind of look at what the cluster may be there. All we could predict right now is the cluster. As I said, and I'll name names. We'll go into detail. 11 guys that are front five guys. All right, if you start with your edge guys, you got Bosa, Allen, Sweat right now. Those are the top three. Interior linemen, which is great this year. You've got Q Williams out of Alabama. You got Oliver, Gray, Wilkins, and Simmons, the guy we talked about. Now, Simmons is a unique cat because of the ACL. Then there are three guys right below them. Farrell could be a guy that falls to 26. Brian Burns from Florida State, and Lawrence, the defensive nose tackle. Now, that's 11 guys. If any of those guys slip to 26, which is always possible because quarterbacks will inflate the draft. Some teams will draft a tight end on need or something like that. But if any of those guys, and the guys that I look that could fall, Simmons, Simmons because of the ACL. And to me, I would have no trouble biting that bullet, knowing I'm getting a red shirt, but I'm getting a lottery pick at 26. I'm getting a bargain, okay? I think Farrell could fall because Farrell's a real good player, but his metrics just aren't off the charts. So guys like that. Lawrence could fall a little bit because he's a big nose tackle, okay? Now, any of those guys fall, you take them and you never look back. The chances of them falling aren't great, so you know that. Two real good stack linebackers on defense, the white kid from LSU, and then Devin Bush, the kid from Michigan. I actually worked his dad out. That's amazing. In 1995, I worked out Devin Bush Sr. at Florida State when I was at the Browns, and we were going to pick him 26th at strong safety, and somebody picked him. I think it was the Falcons picked him at 25. I'll never forget that as long as I live, and we had to go scramble. But anyway, then you're probably going to have the three quarterbacks. Okay, you're going to have the three quarterbacks. And, you know, I think here's what I look at. At 26, you're going to get a hell of a player, and you may get a premier player, but it may not be in your area of needs. Just remember that. Right. That's for starters. There's 5 offensive linemen that I think are top blue chip guys, okay, top blue chip guys. I think Taylor from Florida is the best right tackle in the league. I think he's an instant starter. I think Dillard from Washington State is a starter and the only true left tackle. That's why you need that money for Costanzo. Those guys don't grow on trees.
No doubt.
Only one this year to me who is an actual left tackle. Then you've got 3 guys that are combination guard tackles. You got Jonas Williams at Alabama, whose really best position will be guard, but he can play some tackle. You got Ford from Oklahoma, same thing, right tackle, right guard. And then you got Lindstrom from Boston College. So you got 5 blue chip offensive linemen. I'm still not quite as convinced as everybody else in town that our right side is perfect yet. And we always know we can kick Smitty inside if you took an offensive lineman. Again, what you want to get there is a premier player. You don't want to settle for a second-tier guy if you can get a first-tier guy with 26. 2 great tight ends, okay? Hawkinson from Iowa is what you want. He's the best in the league because he can block it and he can catch it and pick it. He's in the 4.6s. He's at 250. Great football player. If he would be there 26, can't walk by him. Can't walk by him. And then the other guy is Fant, who's a young Ebron, only an even better athlete, more speed. So you've got some positions there. Offensive line, I think tight end. Now, I think the other rich position, now I look at them a little different than other people, is safety. Now, we've invested in keeping safeties here, but we've got injury issues with all of them. So there are some safeties there. Now, I like some different guys. I'm not on the board. I'm not with chalk on how they evaluate safeties. I like Thornhill and Gardner Johnson better than Abrams and those guys that people have slotted to us. The corner position, I think they're all flawed, but there's a lot of very, very good prospects. I don't think there's a premier prospect. So I think that can be a second-day shot. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of difference between 1 and 12. And I'll get into those guys on Monday. I'll outline exactly.
We're going to go a lot deeper.
I have 5 guys on Monday that I would target, and they're not the top 5 in terms of all the guys that are mocking this stuff. The interesting position is wide receiver. Okay, interesting position. There are 2 guys that I would say have Marquis written on them, but they're flawed. You got Metcalf, who blew out the combine in terms of speed at 6'4", 225. He ran the 4.33. Big power outside guy. Now, he's had a lot of injuries, neck injury. Runs like a 4.5 short shuttle, which is not very good. He's never been that quick, but he's a big time. He's what you would like to really get with Funches. Funches doesn't have that kind of speed.
Right.
He's got top end. He can go. He can catch the 50-50 ball. But he's a little bit at risk with the injuries. He hasn't been real productive. And then Marquis Hollywood Brown out of Oklahoma is just wow. I mean, he's just a wow player. Big play guy, can catch the short when and go, can get deep. He reminds me of Antonio Brown, really. But the problem is, there is one problem. First of all, he's got the Liz Frank right now. He's coming off the foot, so he's not going to work out for anybody. So you're taking a guy that you know you're going to have to wait for a little bit. And then number 2, he's 166 pounds. Now, this league is not good to 166-pound players. All the GMs will tell you that. Now, there's always going to be an exception, and this kid, when you watch the tape, will just blow you away. Now, take those 2 guys out of it because you're going to have to deal from the heart on those. You're either going to like them and take the chance or not. But then you get into a ton of guys that I think are really good second-day guys that you pick your poison. I love
I tell you what, keep that in mind. We'll take a break, but I think that's second-day guys at wide receiver is exactly what they'll be looking at here. That's what I think. Rick Venturi is with us. Let me take a break. We're at Wolfies, brought to you by Yuengling on Morse Reservoir. This is home base for Rick Venturi. He is here. If you guys have any questions at 239-1070, you can lob them in. Pacers game 3 later on tonight. We're not leaving that on the back burner. We're talking about that. I got JJ Mike Wells at the 5 o'clock hour for more on what is the most must-win situation we have seen in a while around here tonight against the Celtics. Raptors Magic tonight. Their game 3 is at 7. Meantime, the Trailblazers and Thunder, with the Thunder down 0-2 to Portland. They're in OKC later on tonight for their game 3. Quick break. We're back live at Wolfies, brought to you by Yuengling. Next.
The Ride with JMV.
Hey, John Boy.
FM 107.5 and 1070 The Fan.
Yeah, I got to thank my man Christopher Litzy here. He brought me some Frankton gear. Christopher Litzy is here. Runner Bill is here. They both watch every morning on Drop Off Line Sports. I appreciate that. We're at Wolfies. Yuengling brings us to you. $50 Wolfies gift card we're giving away. $250 for Yuengling Pines. I have one right now. Rick Venturi is with me right now, too. We've been talking a little NFL. Of course, Pacers, Celtics game number 3, must-win situation for the Pacers coming up later on tonight. And 8:30 tip time, Bankers Live Fieldhouse. There's a lot going on around here. Did you order the shrimp there?
Oh, no, but
who brought that? Did you order
really
the shrimp?
good.
Somebody brought us the shrimp?
Really good.
I'm going to have to tie into the shrimp.
Nobody does shrimp cocktail like Indianapolis, and we know that, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt.
No doubt. Nobody's close, and everybody.
Who? Is that ours right there?
They brought it for us,
Well,
man,
hell to the yeah.
That's really good.
I got to thank somebody for that.
This is one of my big hangouts, as you know. This is where the Morse Reservoir All-Stars get their name. And we'll talk about some of those guys Monday night.
We got some of those.
Hang on for that one.
Hey, we got some of those. I have this question for you, too. And JJ's going to join us coming up at 5. We'll talk Pacers Celtics. Mike Wells of the 5 o'clock hour, too. I brought this up yesterday, and somebody had asked me a question to ask to you about it. I had heard that the Colts really like what they have as far as up front right now on that D-line, what they have up front with defensive linemen. Do they like it as much as we think, or is that one of those sandbagging, misinformational techniques that maybe I got a hold of here?
Well,
what do you feel about what they have present time? And I'm talking about everybody, including guys like Ward.
No, I think with the addition of Houston, that they feel like that they're solid. Now they're not going to be they're not going to have the Aaron Donald, they're not going to have the J.J. Watt or that great edge rusher, although I think Houston is a big upgrade, and I think he's a big help, but they're not going to have a Von Miller. But I think they like their group collectively. They like it as a group. I still believe, though, that if the right defender was there, if the rusher was there, all of a sudden, if somebody said, Josh Allen is there or Sweat is there on the edge, I don't believe they would hesitate.
Chris Ballard
to do
has
that.
said before recently that you can't have enough offensive linemen and defensive linemen, which I firmly believe.
He's an inside-out guy. There's no doubt he's going to be an inside-out guy. That's why, I think I won't say the problem, but I think the issue is, and, you're probably – I don't think one of those guys is going to fall to 26 on defense. I do think there will be a premier offensive lineman there. If you want to go there, I think there'll be a premier offensive lineman go there. And as I said, I think corner and receiver is where you can steal players on the second round if you know what you're doing and if you judge well. I started to talk about receivers, and we talked about those two premier guys, but there are guys that I really like. I love Hakeem Butler. The kid out of Iowa State at 6'5", he's 220. He's faster than Funchess. And he's that big body guy. If you want that outside guy. A.J. Brown, excellent slot type of guy that could come in a slot, catch a million balls. Deebo Samuels, he's a Morse Reservoir All-Star out of South Carolina. Tremendous with the ball in his hand. And a kid that I really like, and I mentioned it to you when we talked last time a couple weeks ago, is McLaurin from right here at Cathedral. I think he is a sleeper. He has done a great job in the offseason. He's a guy that second day, I don't think he'll last to the third day, but I think he's enough. Those four guys like that, and there's several. It goes beyond that, but there's a handful of guys. The same thing is true at corner and maybe even safety. So, the 26th pick, you just got to get one hell of a player right there, and you can't worry about where he plays.
Yeah, and then you kind of have to try to back up what you did last year too. Living up to everybody's expectations around here.
If you remember when we finished the draft last year, we all knew Nelson was a no-brainer.
No doubt.
Miss Sherry could have done Nelson. There isn't any question about that. Nelson was a no-brainer, and I said. The night of the draft, when it was over, I said on Monday, I said, this draft right now is great at the top, and it's very good at the bottom. I said the key to this draft, the key to the greatness of this draft will be the 4 number 2s.
Yeah.
And here you got Leonard, who's a Pro Bowler already. You got Smith, who's a good starting offensive lineman as a rookie. You got Lewis, who I think will be a pretty good player. And don't give up on Toure. I don't think Toure's ever going to be Von Miller, but I think there's some talent there. So, he hit on those guys. Now, I think the advantage that Chris has in drafting, and I go back to what we talked early in the draft, I think when he took Leonard with that high pick number 2, that was a very interesting pick. Nobody saw that coming, including myself. But he knew that in this defense, this is where system and vision has to be won, that Leonard would be a perfect fit and would come in and have an impact. If Leonard goes to the Patriots, he doesn't have the same year, I guarantee you. But he was a perfect fit here for that pick. So, you're sitting there you got that second pick, that 34, which again should be a really good player. So again, I think the idea of their position fits, but again, I think there are some positions like receiver, corner, maybe even safety, where there may not be the marquee guys, but there's a lot of good players that can make your team better. I think we have to strengthen ourselves in the back end. I'm not as comfortable with our corner situation. I'm very happy we signed Desir. I thought Desir was our best outside corner. Wilson has had his moments. He's up and down. And then, we're good at nickel. But we really need, I think, to help ourselves at corner, because I think if this defense is going to grow. Now, remember, this defense is going to be challenged this year because you're going to play much better quarterbacks, much better offensive coordinators. And if there was a weak spot, it was the overabundance of zone defense that hurt us against great quarterbacks and good teams. And so I think if this defense is going to grow, even when Tampa won the world championship, they played 65% man. When Lovie Smith finished runner-up, it was over 50% man. So you're not going to survive, I don't think, playing 30% man-to-man. You're going to have to improve that. So I would really try to get better at corner number one and get depth there.
So Rick Venturi with us. This is his home field advantage because we're brought to you by Yuengling, and we're at Wolfies on Morse Reservoir. Celtics-Pacers game number 3, a must-win situation for the Pacers. We'll discuss that. You can watch it here, by the way, if you're up here with us. We're packed in here right now, which is great. But you can watch it up here if you're not going to the game and you live anywhere near here. But we'll talk about that matchup. Fox Sports Indiana's Jeremiah Johnson, top of the hour. Mike Wells, bottom of the 5 o'clock hour. We got an Anything Goes segment coming up here at 6 o'clock as well. We'll take a quick break and come back. But I do want Rick to think about something. The Colts have brought in Jay Ajayi, Spencer Ware, veteran running backs for a look. Nothing has been done. What do you think the percentage might be that they end up getting somebody like that or one of them? Quick break, and we'll come back on the other side. Any Pacers Celtics calls, we'll take those. Anything for Rick, we can take those. Otherwise, we're just kind of hanging and banging, as I said back in 1988, with a lot of Q&A with Rick and I, and a great deal on the line for the Pacers. A must-win Game 3 we'll discuss with JJ, top of the hour. Back with you next.
JMV.
The soft tropical air caresses your skin with a gentle kiss.
FM 107.5 and 1070 The Fan.
Oh, we're at Wolfies, brought to you by Yuengling. Rick Venturi is here. We're having conversations all about a variety of things here. Pacers, Celtics, Game 3 tonight, must win. JJ, Jeremiah Johnson, top of the hour, Fox Sports Indiana. We'll get into a little bit of that. Mike Wells, bottom of the 5. We've got some shrimp to eat here. I got to thank the folks at Wolfie. Somebody brought that over there.
Good food here, too. I can speak from experience.
Oh, this is a great place. Now, I ask you, because we were talking about the Colts, about bringing in Ajayi, about bringing in Spencer Ware. Do you think that's something that they will address before camp begins?
I think it's very possible. And, first of all, Ajayi, they're very familiar with him. I mean, Frank had him.
Sure.
He had his best year, obviously, when Frank was there. And if you're going to upgrade the running back core, this is what I see. Mac has now established himself as the starter, as a guy that can play all-purpose downs. He's an explosive kid. We like him. All he has to do is prove long-term endurance. That's it, long-term. Yeah. He's proven the rest of it. Hines is your joker. Hines is that change-up guy. He's a half a receiver. He's a hybrid. If you're going to improve it, what you want to get is a banger, okay? You don't want to get a guy like Mac or like Hines. You want to get that in-between guy that can run between the tackles, that's a slasher, that maybe gives you short yardage stuff. And this is an interesting year at running back. There's really not that premier running back. There certainly isn't any Barkley, or Elliott or anybody like that. The Jacobs guy, probably going to be the first guy picked. but there's no premier guys. Now, again, it's like the receiver core. It's kind of pick your poison. What do you want? You can probably get a good running back second and third day. I've got a guy, my Morris Reservoir all-star running back for the Colts, if you go draft, is a Zigbo from Nebraska, believe it or not, because he's a banger. You know, if I'm going to bring a back in here, I love Ajayi, and you know, I really do. I thought he was outstanding. I thought he was a big reason that they won a Super Bowl. I would not be mad at that at all. Plus, he's a system guy. He understands it. So, but again, I think the principle is if you're going to improve it, what you've got to do is you've got to get a guy better than Wilkins. I mean, that's the key.
Yeah, I just you can't count on anybody anymore. Very few to play 16, but this one thing about Marlon Mack, I mean, you just got to know by now that he's going to likely not be around for a couple of weeks.
A period of time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He has not come through that yet.
Yeah, that's the one thing. And listen, I don't mind Spencer Ware, to be honest with you.
No, I think Ware's the same kind of guy, blue collar slasher, no question about it. And there are some guys like that in the draft as you get going. And again, I think you don't receiver, running back, cornerback. You don't have the marquee guys in terms of pundits, but you have a lot of quality, I think, and you have depth.
JMV, can you ask Rick about the schedule that was released a couple of days ago? What did you think about that? Obviously at first glance, it's the quarterbacks they're going to face this year compared to a year ago.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that, and we kind of knew that. I mean, we knew who we were going to play, and we knew that the offensive challenges will be greater. That isn't any question. The only thing as a coach, when you get the schedule, you're looking for when, where, what time zones. Those are more important because the teams change so much. I mean, if you look at it on the surface, there's 4 playoff teams, but we're playing the schedule in general, I think, has the 4th highest winning percentage, but only 4 playoff teams. Right. So it's not bad. Things that I see right off the bat are you really want to get off to a great start. You got 3 non-playoff teams. You open at San Diego. That's 2 12-4 teams. That's a really tough one, but you go in there and win it, and then you got teams that you can beat there in that top 4. It looks to me like the most important thing is you've got to be able to play on the road. You've got very, very tough games on the road. You got a lot of top quality teams on the road, and you got real quality teams in prime time.
There's no doubt.
I mean, it's kind of, you got to be able to play on the road. You got to play in prime time. Late in the season, one quarter of the season, you're playing the NFC South. One quarter, you're playing your AFC South. The interesting thing about the first 8 games is there's really a diversity in that schedule. I mean, there's NFC teams, AFC, different divisions. Yeah. You look through it. I mean, it is really a diverse. I mean, you're really going to have to prepare week by week. And I think Frank's formula is the only way to go anyway, that 1 week at a time deal. I think, in modern day, the way coaches move and players move, it's really hard to judge your schedule. It really is. I mean, you have to, it's San Diego, and then, I think it's Atlanta, and you have Oakland in that first month. But they're all winnable games.
I have said this. I have said that I think this is going to be the best season top to bottom the AFC South has ever had.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. You're in really good shape. Everybody's improved their team. Jacksonville, who has great talent all over, making the move for the quarterback should really be a boost to them. Although, he's failed with the keys to the kingdom before. So we'll just have to see. But on paper, they're a lot better. But again, I think the good news is the Colts reclaimed that last year. We really, we had owned that division. I mean, owned it. I mean, for so long it was almost like you knew you were going to be 6-0, and then and then we fell by the wayside. But last year was a recap. And I think, particularly pounding Houston like we did was really good for us psychologically going forward.
Rick Venturi is here. He's going to stick around a little bit longer. We're going to talk. We got to eat the shrimp here, too. You can't leave without eating the shrimp. Rick Venturi is going to join me. We're going to go full bore on the NFL draft coming up on Monday's show. But because this is his home base, we said, you got to get out here. We're at Wolfies, Morse Reservoir, brought to you by Yingling. It is packed in here, but we'll find a way to squeeze you in, and we'd love to have you. You watch Game 3, Celtics-Pacers later on tonight, and you can watch it on Fox Sports Indiana, and you can hear the guy from Fox Sports Indiana joining us next. Jeremiah Johnson will join us, and we'll talk about just the